The Stranger in the Stars. The takeout coffee cup warmed Leo Carmichael's hands as he leaned against the library's floor-to-ceiling window, watching the world wind down. Millbrook was a quiet town, the kind that had more history than future, where the sidewalks rolled up at sunset, leaving only the distant hum of traffic and the occasional flickering streetlight. The library had closed an hour ago, but Leo lingered, savoring the solitude and the last of his Americano. The warmth against his palm was reassuring, a small ritual in a life otherwise devoid of surprises. Bookshelves stretched behind him, their wooden spines worn by time and countless fingers, containing the collective knowledge of generations. He loved this place, the scent of ink, the crisp pages, the sense that the past still mattered. Then the sky split open. A streak of light tore across the horizon, too fast for a meteor, too controlled for a plane. It rippled unnaturally, the glow shimmering in and out of visibility, like the universe itself was deciding whether to reveal its secret. Leo straightened, eyes narrowing. The coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. He had seen this before, on paper, in research buried so deep in military archives that only a handful of people on Earth had the clearance to access it. A hum filled the air, low, vibrating, as if reality itself was adjusting. The streetlights flickered. A static charge prickled against his skin. He barely had time to set his coffee down before the beam struck. Light enveloped him, bright enough to turn the world to a blur. His stomach lurched. Gravity twisted, reversed, and the floor vanished beneath him. For a fraction of a second, he caught his reflection in the glass, a tall, slim man in a cardigan and glasses, eyes wide, mouth slightly parted, a flicker of amusement playing at the edges of his face. Then the window, the library, the quiet town of Millbrook, all of it, was gone. Leo landed hard on smooth, cold metal. The light dimmed, replaced by a deep blue glow. He inhaled sharply, the air sterile and tinged with something unfamiliar. Ozone, machinery, something alive. He was no longer on Earth. The chamber around him was massive, its ceiling disappearing into darkness, carved walls lined with symbols that seemed to pulse with a slow, rhythmic energy. The architecture was unlike anything human hands had ever built, fluid, organic, as if the structure itself was breathing. Armed figures flanked a raised dais ahead, their armor sleek and segmented, weapons unfamiliar yet unmistakably lethal. At the center sat two figures on thrones of intertwining metal, their forms regal, their presence imposing. Leo's gaze landed on the one speaking. Her voice was smooth, rich, with the kind of authority that didn't need to be forced. Another human. She wasn't human, not even close. Her skin shimmered in the dim glow, a deep, lustrous blue, like polished stone kissed by the night sky. Metallic lines traced her collarbone, disappearing beneath an intricate gown that seemed to shift as she moved. Her eyes, brilliant sapphire, sharp with intelligence, locked onto his with something between curiosity and disdain. The man beside her was broader, angular, his expression twisted with something closer to contempt than curiosity. His deep navy cape draped over one arm, the folds woven with what looked like symbols of authority. A prince, then. A ruler, perhaps. Leo straightened, adjusting his glasses. Right on schedule, he muttered. The prince's eyes narrowed. You dare to speak so casually in the presence of Prince Azar of the Dion Empire. Leo took an unhurried sip of his coffee, still warm, miraculously. Oh, we're doing the whole announce your title thing. Good to know. The guard stiffened. A few exchanged uncertain glances, a sharp inhale. Then, a soft, unexpected laugh. Leo turned his gaze back to the princess. Her smirk was subtle, but unmistakable. A librarian, she mused. Is that what you are, Earthling? Head librarian, he corrected smoothly. Millbrook Public Library. He gave a small bow, entirely too casual for the moment. I'd offer you my card, but intergalactic travel wasn't on my schedule today. She chuckled, An actual, genuine laugh. Azar did not. The prince's fingers curled into fists. You mock us? Leo tilted his head. Not intentionally. I just assumed abductions came with a bit more formality. A red carpet, maybe. He took another sip. Or at least a better welcome speech. Azar's face darkened. Guards. Take him to the holding cells. We will see how long his wit lasts in isolation. 2 armored figures moved toward him. Leo exhaled through his nose, rolling his shoulders. So, that was how this was going to go. As they gripped his arms, he caught the princess's gaze once more. Her smirk was gone, replaced by something thoughtful. Assessing. She knew. Leo let himself be led away, the metal corridors whispering with unseen energy as the doors sealed behind them. He had planned for this. Everything. The energy signals, the anomaly that had drawn their attention, the choice of location, it had all been intentional. He had sent a message, and they had answered. Now, it was his move. The game begins. The cell was cleaner than Leo expected. Smooth metallic walls pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow, as if the ship itself was alive. There were no visible doors, no bars, no obvious means of escape, just an expanse of metal and light, as seamless as the technology that had pulled him off Earth. Leo paced slowly, running his fingertips along the cool surface. The craftsmanship was precise, impossibly intricate. If he had to guess, the walls operated on a molecular locking system, solid until they weren't, able to open at will with the right command or biometric authorization. He reached into his cardigan pocket, retrieving what remained of his coffee cup. The liquid had gone cold, but he turned it thoughtfully in his hands, as if the answer to his predicament lay somewhere in the dregs. A soft hum filled the air, followed by a flicker of light. Leo turned as a holographic projection shimmered into existence before him. Prince Azar's face materialized, his sharp features twisted in an arrogant sneer. Comfortable, human. Azar's voice carried the same barely contained irritation he had shown in the throne room. Leo exhaled through his nose, offering a small shrug. I was expecting something a bit more dramatic. Chains, maybe. A flickering light to set the mood. Azar's expression tightened. You mock the Dian Empire. Leo took a step closer to the projection, peering at it like an intrigued museum-goer. Oh no, I'm impressed. Really. Advanced interstellar civilization. Seamless architecture. Perfect containment system. But the interrogation techniques, a little outdated. Hologram intimidation. That's so. Last century. Azar's jaw clenched, but before he could respond, another voice cut through the static. You speak boldly for someone in your position. The projection shifted slightly, revealing her. Princess Raylan stood beside Azar, her arms crossed, those piercing sapphire eyes studying Leo with an unreadable expression. The glow of the hologram gave her an ethereal quality, her metallic tattoos shimmering along her collarbone. Leo straightened slightly. I like to think of it as constructive criticism. Azar's patience had clearly reached its limit. Enough. You are a lesser species, a primitive anomaly that has no place among the stars. You will learn your place soon enough. Leo adjusted his glasses, tilting his head slightly. You say that like you've already decided my fate. But tell me, if humans are so insignificant, why did you bother bringing me here? Azar's sneer faltered for just a fraction of a second. A flicker of something. Hesitation. Annoyance. Raylan's gaze flicked toward the prince, and for the first time, Leo saw it. A crack in the dynamic. She wasn't just standing beside Azar. She was observing him, analyzing him. Interesting. Azar scoffed, waving a hand. Your presence was an accident. Leo smirked. Right. Because advanced civilizations with intergalactic sensors just accidentally abduct people. Raylan's lips twitched, but she said nothing. Azar's glare deepened. You're insufferable. Leo lifted his coffee cup in a mock toast. I try. The projection flickered out with an angry buzz, leaving the cell dim and silent once more. Leo exhaled slowly. His instincts were right. This wasn't just a random abduction. They had noticed something. He had made them notice. And now, the pieces were in motion. He just had to figure out the next move. The unexpected visitor. Time passed in a slow, calculated rhythm. The soft hum of the ship remained constant, a heartbeat of technology and energy. Leo sat cross-legged on the small metallic bench, eyes closed, mind calculating possibilities. Then the walls shifted. A thin, almost imperceptible seam appeared, and the entrance melted open. Leo opened his eyes, watching as she stepped inside. Leo pushed himself to his feet, stretching slightly before stepping beside her. As they walked through the corridors, he took in every detail. The guard rotations, the subtle shifts in security patterns, the way Raylan moved with quiet authority. She wasn't just another noble. She was someone who watched, who analyzed, who understood. And that made her the most dangerous person on this ship. The Grand Hall was breathtaking. Leo had expected something elaborate, but this was beyond anything human hands had ever created. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, carved from some kind of shimmering black stone that reflected the soft glow of the floating orbs above. The walls pulsed with intricate patterns, shifting like liquid stardust. Massive crystalline pillars lined the chamber, their translucent surfaces humming with energy. At the far end, an elevated dais loomed above the court, where Azar sat like a king. His navy blue cape draped over his broad shoulders, and his golden insignia gleamed under the ethereal light. His expression was sharp, predatory. He was waiting for this moment. Leo exhaled slowly. The game was about to begin. The trial of wits. The chamber quieted as Leo stepped forward, every gaze locking onto him. Nobles lined the curved walls, their regal attire shimmering in various hues of blue and silver. Some watched with curiosity, others with disdain. Raylan moved toward her designated seat, her gaze lingering on him for just a fraction longer than necessary. Good. That meant she wasn't sure what to expect. Azar rose from his throne. "Earthling," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You have been brought before this court not as a guest, but as an anomaly. Your presence here is a mistake, one that must be corrected." Leo tilted his head. "A mistake? You abducted me. I was minding my own business, enjoying my coffee, and suddenly I'm part of an intergalactic kidnapping. Feels like a you problem." A ripple of murmurs spread through the court. A few nobles even exchanged glances. This wasn't how prisoners were supposed to act. Azar's nostrils flared. "Your arrogance will not save you." Leo gave a small shrug. "It's not arrogance, it's perspective." He let his eyes scan the room. "I mean, think about it. If I were just another primitive human, why am I standing here? Why didn't you execute me the moment I arrived?" The murmurs grew louder. Raylan watched him carefully now, her fingers resting against her chin. She saw it. The shift. The change. Azar's jaw tightened. "Enough of your games. The court demands proof of your worth." He gestured to the far end of the chamber. The floor shifted, and from below, a massive, hovering construct rose into place. It was circular, its surface covered in intricate, interconnected symbols. It pulsed with deep blue light, humming with latent energy. Raylan's gaze flickered with interest. Leo's smirk grew. Oh, this was going to be fun. Azar stepped forward, raising his voice. "This is the trial of wits, a test given only to those who claim intellect beyond their station. It is an ancient puzzle, unsolved by many, mastered by few. If you fail, you will be dealt with accordingly." Leo exhaled through his nose, stepping toward the floating structure. He studied the symbols, tracing their patterns with his eyes. Then he laughed softly. Raylan's brows lifted slightly. Azar scowled. "Something amusing." Leo turned, gesturing toward the construct. "This is based on fractal recursion, isn't it? It's a multi-dimensional logic system, constantly rewriting itself based on observational input. Whoever designed this was clever, but they made one mistake. Azar narrowed his eyes. And what mistake is that? Leo reached out, pressing a single symbol near the construct's center. The entire structure shuddered, its glow intensifying. The symbols began shifting, rotating, until suddenly the entire thing froze. Complete silence. Then, the construct collapsed in on itself, its energy imploding into a single point before dissipating. The court gasped. Leo dusted off his hands. They forgot that recursive patterns are predictable. If you create an equation that rewrites itself, all you need to do is find the invariant variable. He turned back to Azar. This one had 3. Azar's face twisted in fury. Raylan, she smiled. Leo met her gaze for just a moment before turning back to the prince. So, do I get a prize? Or just more threats? Azar's fists clenched. He looked like he was about to order Leo's immediate execution, but before he could speak, Raylan stood. The Earthling has demonstrated intelligence beyond expectation, she said smoothly, her voice carrying across the hall. By the laws of the court, he has earned a place within our ranks. Azar whirled on her, his voice a low growl. You overstep. Raylan met his glare without flinching. No, I follow the law. Leo crossed his arms, watching the exchange with mild amusement. This was exactly the kind of friction he had hoped for. Azar turned back to him, his expression dark. This is not over. Leo smirked. Oh, I certainly hope not. The court murmured, the tension thick. Raylan turned toward him. Come, Earthling. Leo adjusted his glasses. Lead the way, princess. As he followed her out of the grand hall, he couldn't help but smile. The game was only just beginning. A game of empires. Leo followed Princess Raylan through the shimmering corridors of the Dion flagship, his steps light, but his mind racing. The court's reaction to his victory in the trial of wits had been exactly what he expected. Shock, intrigue, and most importantly, division. Azar had wanted him humiliated. Instead, Leo had positioned himself as a problem that couldn't be ignored. And now, he was being led somewhere much more interesting than a cell. The walls of the ship pulsed with a faint bioluminescent glow, their seamless surfaces giving no hint of doors or panels, yet shifting open effortlessly as Raylan walked through. She carried herself with a deliberate grace, like someone used to being observed but never controlled. After a few minutes, the corridor widened into an expansive chamber, a private observatory. Leo's steps slowed. A massive window curved overhead, revealing a breathtaking panorama of space. A gas giant loomed in the distance, its swirling storms painting the void in hues of blue and violet. Closer, sleek Dion ships hovered in tight formation, their hulls reflecting the ambient light of a nearby star. For a moment, Leo allowed himself to admire the view. Then he turned to Raylan. So, he said casually, adjusting his glasses, am I here for tea or an execution? Raylan smirked. That depends on how well you answer my questions. Leo gestured grandly to the room. By all means, interrogate away. She studied him for a moment before speaking. How did you solve the trial of wits so easily? Leo exhaled, tapping a finger against his temple. Because I understood how it was designed. He began pacing slowly, hands tucked behind his back. The puzzle was meant to appear impossible, an evolving equation with no fixed state. But the mistake your ancestors made was assuming that a changing system has no pattern. He turned back to her. Everything has a pattern. You just have to find it. Raylan's expression didn't change, but he caught the slight tilt of her head, the way her fingers twitched at her sides. She wasn't just listening. She was evaluating. She took a step forward. You're not a scientist, but you understand fractal recursion. You're not a diplomat, yet you maneuvered through the court as if you've done it 100 times. You're not a warrior, yet you show no fear. Her sapphire eyes locked onto his. So what are you, Earthling? Leo met her gaze without hesitation. A librarian. She gave a quiet, amused scoff. Try again. He shrugged. A strategist. She took another step closer. For whom? Leo smirked. For myself. Raylan studied him for a long moment, the silence stretching between them. The ship hummed faintly in the background, a quiet reminder of the power surrounding them. Then she turned away, walking toward a small control panel along the wall. With a flick of her fingers, the panoramic window darkened, shifting into a holographic star map. Leo's eyes flickered over the projection, taking in the glowing planetary systems, the strategic markings indicating fleet movements, supply routes, and Earth. His smirk vanished. Raylan's voice was quiet but firm. This is the Diem Empire. It spans over 40 systems, ruling billions of lives. She turned to face him. Your planet exists on the edge of our mapped territories, a small, insignificant world with no interstellar travel, no real military strength, no place in the greater cosmic order. Leo said nothing. He simply waited. She walked toward him, her gaze sharp. So tell me, Leo Carmichael, how is it that an insignificant human like you managed to manipulate one of the most advanced empires in the galaxy into bringing you here? Leo tilted his head. Because you were looking for me, he said simply. Raylan's lips parted slightly, just enough for him to know that, for the first time, he had surprised her. He took a step closer. You didn't abduct me by accident. You picked up a signal, one I designed for you to find. He gestured to the holographic map. And now you're trying to understand why I did it. Raylan exhaled slowly. You wanted to be here. Leo smiled. Oh, I needed to be here. The weight of his words settled between them. Raylan turned back to the star map, her fingers dancing across the controls. The projection shifted, zooming in on Earth's solar system. You don't have long, she said quietly. Leo's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Raylan's expression darkened. The Diem Empire isn't the only power in the galaxy. She gestured to a cluster of systems just outside Earth's orbit. This is the Rothari Dominion, a militaristic race, expansionist, ruthless. They've conquered 5 civilizations in the past decade alone. Leo's heart rate picked up, but he kept his expression neutral. And Raylan exhaled. They know about your planet. Leo's grip tightened around his coffee cup. How long? She hesitated. Then, 6 months, maybe less. A slow breath left his lungs. He had suspected something like this, but hearing it confirmed was different. Raylan turned to him, her voice lower now. Azar doesn't care. To him, your world is irrelevant, barely worth noting in the grand game of empires. But the Rothari, they see unclaimed territory. Leo's fingers tapped against his cup. So what's stopping them? Raylan's eyes gleamed. For now, the fact that we claim this sector. But if Azar loses interest, she let the words hang in the air. Leo's mind raced. This was bigger than he thought. He had orchestrated his capture for a reason, to gain information, to find an edge. But now he was staring at something far worse than he had anticipated. Earth was on borrowed time. Raylan studied him. You understand now, don't you? Leo exhaled slowly. I do. He met her gaze. And you? Why are you telling me this? For the first time, Raylan hesitated. Then her voice softened. Because I want to see what you'll do. A slow, knowing smile spread across Leo's face. Oh, princess, he murmured. You're going to love this.